Well, there's a delay though, isn't there? I guess we could just be here chatting and be like, oh hey, we're live now.
Oh, we didn't see you there.
Oh yeah, we're live. Cool.
We didn't see you there. Hello. Welcome to Better Utah Broadcast. My name is Katie Matheson. I am the Communications Director here at Alliance for a Better Utah. And today we have just Chase, but not just Chase.
Hi.
Chase Thomas, our Executive Director. Lauren Simpson, our Policy Director, who is usually with us, is at a healthcare conference.
Mm-hmm. For the Utah Health Policy Project.
Right. We love them. Utah Health Policy Project. So if you follow us on Twitter, you'll probably see some of her updates as she tweets about the day.
Mm-hmm.
So Chase and I are here today for our Better Utah broadcast. Of course, we are on live every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Sometimes we will have guests. We've had guests in the past. And then sometimes it will just be the staff talking about recent news, giving our take, and or hot takes rather. Hot takes. Yeah, hashtag hot take. Because we're millennials, we have to use hashtag in a sentence. Anyway, we hope you're all surviving this snowy day. We love it here. And poor Chase is dealing with a inversion cough.
Yeah.
So it's like the black lung, but for Salt Lake City or Salt Lake County.
Watch out for a blog post on how important air quality is because I die every single winter.
Right.
So
he literally dies every single winter.
I feel like I'm actually sick. I went to the urgent care once because of it, and they were just like, nope, can't do anything, can't help you.
Yep. And if the air quality gets to you like it gets to Chase, look out for our Escape the Inversion contest, which we will be dropping next week, where we are going to be giving away a room, I think it's service for 2 in Las Vegas, so you can escape the inversion in February. So keep your eyes out for that. But let's start digging into our a couple topics for today. The first one, of course, is the 2019 legislative session, which is going to be super exciting. Everybody's very psyched, or whatever the word is.
Are they?
Are they, though?
All the nerds are psyched.
All the nerds are psyched, and that's what matters. But really, everybody should be excited. Even if you don't understand the legislative process, even if you don't know how to read bills, we are here to help you with that. Because these policies that they will likely be passing during this session will impact your life. Mm-hmm. So, policy is sometimes thought of as something that's other from our existence, something for nerds to just talk about. But the reality is that you live your daily life surrounded by policy choices that other people have made for you. Stuff as simple as like how high up off the ground an outlet is, stuff like that. It all impacts. It all is impacted by policy regulations, and so you should be involved because policy impacts your life. But we don't need to make that case to you because it's at 12:30 on a Wednesday and you're watching this, so you know.
And outlets are super exciting. That's what makes the legislative session exciting.
Okay. It's super exciting when somebody gets electrocuted. All right, so let's talk about the session. What kind of bills can we expect and what are we watching for?
Well, I think with the governor's budget coming out last week, his proposed budget for 2020, I don't know, however those fiscal years work, he outlined a lot of his priorities, and I think that's going to indicate a lot of what we'll be seeing in the lev session. Education funding, of course, will come up, and education standards. We're most likely going to see stuff about Medicaid, because that's a huge portion of the budget, transportation, all the things that you normally hear about every year, we'll hear about those again. Tax reform is another one. And then what we're really focusing on, as the public has seen, we released Prop Watch. We're anticipating that there will be more changes to the propositions. There was already a change to Prop 2 with the compromise. There's going to be further changes. Lawmakers have already said they're going to change Prop 3 because they want to change how it's funded, perhaps put enrollment caps and work requirements on, even though they passed this without those things expressly in it, so super frustrating. And then Prop 4, we have no idea what's going to happen with that, but lawmakers have been very hostile to Prop 4 as well. So we're keeping our ears open on those. We're going to let people know how they can when they need to contact their lawmakers. We'll have a sign up for action alerts, daily updates on the legislative session, what's happening, with hot takes, and also my sarcastic commentary on the lead session. Gets very sassy towards the end. But yeah, that's, I don't know, lead session in a nutshell. Anything can happen and anything probably will happen.
Right. So we're going to be watching, so in sum, we will be watching for any adjustments to the content of the policies themselves for the proposition. So that's medical cannabis, Medicaid expansion, and of course fair redistricting. But then also we'll be watching for changes to the proposition process, getting stuff on the ballot. There's talk about a bill going forward that Governor Herbert supports, which is to get rid of that weird, I think it's like a 30-day period where you can take your signature off of a ballot initiative.
Yeah, so this happened with Count My Vote.
Right.
Count My Vote initially got all the signatures they needed to be on the ballot, and then there's that 30-day window where people can go out and launch a campaign to get people to take their signatures off for 30 days after. And so I think it's Representative Nelson who has opened a bill file to make those the same day of the cutoff. Sort of just like equality on that. And so there's, I mean, probably other changes that people will try to make to the initiative process. Just because, I mean, as we saw with Prop 2, lawmakers don't like when the public writes laws.
When the public exercises their constitutionally given right to write laws.
Yeah, they think they can do it better, even though the process for writing this law and getting on the ballot took years. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so we'll be keeping an eye out for that. And if you've never spent a single day or the entire session up there on the Hill watching, one, I encourage you to go because it's a beautiful building. We are very fortunate to have, I would say, probably one of the most, if not the most beautiful capitals in the country. I mean, it's just a gorgeous building. But even beyond that, it's really neat to be a part of and to watch a session. They're open, so you can go in and sit in the gallery and watch it happen. Come by, say hi to us. But also things go very fast, and sometimes the language that's used is very confusing if you're not familiar with it. So if you're interested in getting involved, or you've been involved but you're interested in learning more, again, like Chase said, you can sign up for our email updates, which we will be making easier to find soon enough. And then we'll be giving updates on social media and stuff like that. So we will definitely be keeping an eye out, working our hardest, just like a lot of other groups, to protect the will of the people, protect the voices of the people. You know, there were Utahns overwhelmingly voted in support of Prop 2, Prop 3, and Prop 4, even though it got close. I mean, the people support it.
The majority of the voters supported it.
And so we will be, and that's how laws are passed.
Yeah.
So we will be watching out for those things. And of course, if you have any questions and you're watching this live, you can of course ask us anything you want about the session or process, etc. But let's move on to our next topic, which is going to be access to public service. So this is a topic that we around the office have discussed on and off recently in the past couple of weeks. And Lauren, our policy director, wrote a blog post about it, which we're reposting tonight. But it talks about people who are being kept from service, being kept from being able to easily serve in government positions.
We're good.
We're good. Sorry, our screen just went funny. And talking about why it matters. So do you want to just kind of give us an overview of that conversation?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, the Salt Lake City Council had a discussion about whether or not they should raise their pay because it hadn't been raised since like 1970 something or whatever. And if you're ever on our Twitter, we switch around from people depending on who's doing what, but if there's ever a long rant about something, it's normally me. So I went on a rant on our Twitter page about how the way that government operates and pay and everything currently makes it inaccessible for certain parts of our community. So for low poverty, even middle income people, a lot of marginalized communities, people have to work all the time when even city council meetings are getting longer and longer there all through the day. And so yesterday, Salt Lake City Council actually did increase their pay, and their reason being so that they could, so more people in the community in the city could have the opportunity to be in public service. But I mean, pay isn't the only thing. There's a lot of barriers to being involved in public service, whether it is those official structures. I was even talking about, like, there was an article from Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez about how she couldn't move to Washington, D.C. until she actually started getting paid, just because D.C. is so expensive. There were reports about how now that there's so much women in the Capitol, they're having to make changes to the actual Capitol building to accommodate women.
Which blows my mind that it was 2018 and just now we're having to make those adjustments.
So I mean, recently, I think it might have been last year or the year before, the architect of the Capitol building had to make another bathroom closer to the House of Representatives because all the women had to walk through the public through the statuary hall to get to a women's restroom, whereas the men had one right next to the chambers. So it's stuff like that, structural. But I mean, there's so much more, whether it's not being able to get off work. I don't know, just,
Yeah. I mean, something that Lauren pointed out in her blog post, which I have dropped into the comment section here, is that our legislative session during the end of January through February and the beginning of March is, I mean, we were talking about city council, but in terms of the legislature, it is during a very difficult time for teachers. So we have a lot of people who are retired teachers who are able to serve, which is really important. Having teachers there, especially in a state that says that we value education and we value children, but we don't put our money where our mouth is. Having people who have been there in schools, have seen what our classrooms are like, is very important. But it's also important to have people who are currently teachers, not just retired. And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know what that would be. But that is a barrier that she mentioned. And of course, you know, flipping the conversation a little bit, sometimes people, you know, progressives tend to talk about diversity of representation as if people understand that it's a given that we should have diversity of representation. And so just to touch on that a little bit, the reason, of course, that it's important to have diversity of representation is because we have different lived experiences, and oftentimes having a body such as the Utah legislature, which is vastly homogenous in terms of age, in terms of religion, in terms of race, and otherwise orientation, is that a lot of times there are just massive blind spots that large bodies that are very homogenous have when it comes to certain issues. You know, things, you know, simple rules or changes in code or laws can seem totally innocuous. And if we don't have somebody, you know, this law may impact a certain group of people that is not very well represented up on the Hill or wherever. And we need people there who have these lived experiences, who reflect the demographics of the people that you know, these legislators are making laws for, to stand up and say, hey, you know, this is actually what that would do to my community and others in our state. And so that's the reason why diverse representation is important, and that's why, as Lauren makes the case in her wonderful blog post, that it's important that public service not just be seen as a retirement option, or not just be seen as like something for someone who is maybe wealthier and can afford to take 45 days off or whatever it is, to go and serve. It's important for it not to just become that. You know, it's important for everyone to be able to access it, and some people, you know, I mean, you need to pay your bills, right? And so, yeah, that's that in a nutshell. Do you have anything else to add to that? Nope. Okay, Katie's rant is over. All right, so the next segment, let's talk about the inland port. There was some great coverage on KUER about the inland port, and I believe it was, the headline was, community critics are beating the hell out of inland port board, one member says. So let's break it down.
First of all, which member of the board is this? Senator Buxton.
From Roy.
Yeah, from Roy, and he is the one of two people who are directly elected by Utahns and now serve on the board. And so he is representing the people, the state of Utah, in this, and he is the one that is complaining about the community being too involved in the Inland Port Board. I mean, basically that's his complaint, is that there's this Coalition for Port Reform, which we're a part of, along with other groups like Center for Biological Diversity, the Audubon Society, different environmental groups and community groups like West Point City Council, all these different people. And they've been showing up to every single meeting. They've been making comments. They've been talking about their concerns, about not only the process, but also structural things that they're deciding with this board, which normally you want to have public input into government. We always say, oh, well, it's just an empty room with nobody cares what's going on. This actually has people who care, and they're commenting, and now we have the person who represents Utahns complaining about Utahns getting involved. And it's also strange that the business leader, so Derek Miller, who is the head of the Salt Lake City Chamber, is the one that's encouraging community involvement and saying, no, everything's fine. So it's a real strange reversal of normal positions here. And yeah, Inland Port, it's always controversial.
I find it interesting in this article, and this was from Senator Buxton, he said most of the complaints are about air quality, mostly about truck traffic and being able to make everything work.
Yeah.
So those are incredibly valid concerns. Like,
I am very concerned about air quality.
His
as you
throat
can hear by
is
my
very
voice right
worried.
now.
Yeah, I mean, those are incredibly valid concerns, you know, not just for us, but for our children, for our grandchildren, you know. I mean, this port is going to impact the rest of the existence of the state. These are things that should be done right.
Yeah. It'll significantly increase freight if we have the inland port. And right now we're not using clean technology. It's diesel trucks, freight cars, diesel trains. So I mean, all these things are going to be emitting more pollution into the Salt Lake City Valley, which is already extremely polluted. And so what this coalition is saying is, we know that the port is probably going to happen, but why don't we invest in making it the best it can be, in using clean technology, having air quality mitigation tactics and policies. I mean, I believe that's a good thing, but Senator Buxton and Representative Brad Wilson, who's the incoming speaker, believe this community engagement, this concern over air quality could possibly be a bad thing, and they want to speed up the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable frustration with how slow something like this is going. Like, that's understandable. But if you want it to speed up, this is not the thing to speed up. Like, if you want to, do stuff on the other side. I don't know, but like, this is do it right the first time. Let's get it done. And we've said this before. I've said this before. I tell this to my 4-year-old child who doesn't care. But like, Utah has an amazing opportunity to, because we don't have a lot of our infrastructure built yet, to do it right the first time, right? There are a lot of cities, a lot of states, particularly on the East Coast, where things developed a long time ago, where they have to go back and redo stuff now, and we have the opportunity to do it right the first time. And by right, I mean green. Good for our climate, good for our growing communities, stuff like that. So this is really interesting. We're going to keep watching this, right?
Yeah. There's actually an Inland Port meeting this afternoon, so I'll be headed up to the Capitol at 4 o'clock. And if anybody wants to join me...
and it's not a closed meeting, which is great.
Yeah, it's open. So community will be involved this afternoon.
Woohoo! So we will see you there. All right, so anything else you wanted to talk about before we close up? Should we give a shout out to outgoing Senator Hatch?
Oh yeah, Senator Hatch. I don't know what's up with our federal delegation between Senator Hatch and Representative Stewart. in how every single thing that Trump does, they have to defend him. I mean, most Republicans have decided just to be quiet and not comment anymore. Like Stewart used to say, "Oh, I don't read his tweets, I can't comment on that." But now he's just like, "Oh yes, go Trump." I mean, and Senator Hatch, that's pretty much what he did. He's like, "I don't care if he committed a crime. The economy's doing great." So just as long as you're contributing to the economy, you can do whatever you want, which I guess we see in corporations all the time. But thank you, Senator Hatch.
So, bye, Senator Hatch. Adios. I mean, it's kind of sad because he did have a great career in the beginning, and he did some great things. You know, the chip is the one that comes to mind. We brought him 20,000 chocolate chips a year ago, trying to get him to push reauthorization of that. So that was great. And then, of course, Representative Love, speaking of outgoing flaming statements, she actually has gone the opposite route and is kind of
attacking Trump.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it would have been fun to see this 2 years ago, but...
Yeah. I mean, she has had multiple, opportunities to be in the news lately.
Is she auditioning?
Recently, oh yeah, she's in the news to audition to be on the news.
Do you think that she'll take Jason Chaffetz's position as a Fox News commentator when Chaffetz runs for governor?
I don't think she's wanting to wait that long until Chaffetz steps down.
Maybe she'll
I think she wants to be just have a similar role.
Right.
But yeah, it's, I don't know. Frustrating that she didn't come out with this stuff earlier. Frustrating that she's saying some weird stuff too. Like blaming her loss on Democrats targeting her because she is a black woman Republican. And that goes to earlier, like, we want to have diverse representation. Just because we voted a black woman out of office doesn't mean we were targeting her. It means that we had someone else who had different policies and would represent us better, and CD4 voted him into office. So it's frustrating hearing her trying to blame it on race, but also good that I guess she's speaking up now.
Right. I mean, she wrote an op-ed today that was published in the Washington Post that I read right before we came on here, and I have to say, if I had heard this stuff from her 2 years ago, like in the very beginning, I might have actually voted for her. I mean, policies aside, but just like what she has to say, I think that it was very, I agree with it. You know, I think we should have robust representation on either side. Given the time, with Trump in office and everything else that's going on, it was, and then of course, given her relative silence and weird stuff about Trump, there was no way I was going to vote for her. But I mean, I thought it was a good op-ed, so I encourage you to go and read it. It will be really interesting to see what things come from her in the future. She's definitely going to be in the public eye as as she continues on in the next stage of her life. So
yeah, we'll see. I mean, Jason Chaffetz is in the public eye still, but it doesn't seem like Utahns are paying much attention to him, even when he's commenting. Like, you'll see policy wonks discussing it, but it's not like every Utahn is getting pissed at it all the time now. Has
he like passed the ridiculous threshold? Like, he's so ridiculous all the time that nobody cares anymore. It's just like, oh, there's Chaffetz.
Well, I mean, it's just like, oh, he's another head on Fox News talking. Why do we have to pay attention to him?
But then the local media covers when he's on the national media, and then there's that commentary, which is super fun. Yeah. I was like, oh, Chaffetz again. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We will see you next week, 12:30. And then the following week, we will not have a show because Christmas. And then the following week, maybe not. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I won't be in town the following week.
Oh, okay. So it'll be me monologuing for 20 minutes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week, 12:30, for Better Utah Broadcast. Bye. And now I vamp while Chase gets up to turn it off. Dun, 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 dun.